The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage, casting gentle shadows across the breakfast table where the Wales family gathered for their daily ritual. Catherine sat with her usual grace, her auburn hair catching the light as she poured tea for William. Their three children chatted excitedly about their upcoming school activities, with Princess Charlotte's animated voice rising above her brother's as she described her art project. "Mummy, can you help me with the watercolors today?" Charlotte asked, her bright eyes sparkling with enthusiasm. At 8 years old, she possessed a natural artistic talent that reminded Catherine of her own childhood passion for creativity. "Of course, darling," Catherine replied, reaching over to smooth her daughter's hair. "We'll work on it after your lessons." William looked up from his morning briefings, smiling at the domestic scene. Despite their royal duties, they had always prioritized creating a normal family environment for their children. The cottage provided them with the privacy they craved, away from the constant scrutiny of palace life. The tranquil morning was interrupted by William's phone buzzing insistently. His expression shifted as he read the message, his jaw tightening almost imperceptibly. Catherine noticed the change immediately, her maternal instincts sharpening. "What is it?" she asked quietly, not wanting to alarm the children. William's eyes met hers across the table, and she saw something that made her stomach clench. "We need to talk," he said simply, setting down his phone. After ensuring the children were settled with their tutors, Catherine followed William to his study. The room, lined with books and family photographs, usually felt like a sanctuary. Today, it felt suffocating. "There's been an incident," William began, his voice carefully controlled. "Yesterday, during Charlotte's visit to the children's hospital with the Queen Consort." Catherine's breath caught. She remembered how excited Charlotte had been about the engagement, her first solo appearance alongside Camilla. It was meant to be a gentle introduction to royal duties, carefully planned to showcase the next generation of royals. "What kind of incident?" Catherine asked, though she could feel dread building in her chest. William handed her his phone, showing a series of text messages from their security detail. As Catherine read, her face grew pale, then flushed with anger. The messages detailed how Camilla had deliberately excluded Charlotte from key moments during the hospital visit. When photographers were present, Camilla had positioned herself so that Charlotte was either out of frame or partially hidden. During the gift-giving ceremony, she had stepped forward just as Charlotte was about to present her handmade cards to the young patients, effectively stealing the moment. But what made Catherine's hands shake with rage was the final incident. When a little girl in the cancer ward had specifically asked to meet the real princess, referring to Charlotte, Camilla had laughed dismissively and said, "Well, I'm the queen now, so I suppose I'm more important." The child had looked confused and hurt, while Charlotte had stood there, her small face crumpling with embarrassment and bewilderment. "She humiliated our daughter," Catherine said, her voice barely above a whisper but filled with volcanic fury. "She deliberately undermined Charlotte in front of sick children." William nodded grimly. "The security footage confirms everything. It wasn't accidental, Catherine. This was calculated." Catherine stood abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked their garden where Charlotte often played. Her daughter's laughter echoed in her memory, innocent and trusting. The thought of that trust being shattered by Camilla's petty jealousy made her feel physically sick. How could she do this to a child? Catherine asked, pressing her palms against the cool glass. Charlotte was so excited, so proud to be helping. And Camilla turned it into a competition. The more Catherine thought about it, the angrier she became. This wasn't just about one incident. For months, she had noticed subtle slights directed at her children, particularly Charlotte. Comments about Charlotte's appearance that seemed innocent but carried an edge. Suggestions that perhaps the children weren't ready for certain royal duties, despite their exemplary behavior. Catherine had dismissed these as harmless observations, possibly even well-meaning advice. But, now, seeing the pattern clearly, she realized it had been systematic undermining. "She's jealous of Charlotte," Catherine said, turning back to William. "A grown woman, jealous of an 8-year-old girl." William's face was grim. "It appears that way. The palace staff have been talking. Apparently, there have been other incidents we weren't told about."
What other incidents? Catherine demanded.
Last month, when Charlotte presented flowers to the visiting dignitaries, Camilla made comments afterward about how the children should be properly trained before public appearances. She suggested Charlotte's curtsy wasn't deep enough and that her dress was too attention-grabbing. Catherine felt her composure slipping further. These weren't constructive criticisms from a concerned grandmother figure. These were deliberate attempts to diminish Charlotte's confidence and position within the family hierarchy.
And you're only telling me this now?
Catherine asked, her voice sharp. I didn't want to burden you with what I thought was just Camilla's insecurity, William admitted.
I thought if we ignored it, it would pass. I was wrong.
Catherine closed her eyes, trying to regain her equilibrium. As the future queen, she had always prided herself on maintaining dignity and composure, even in the face of criticism and challenges.
But this wasn't about her.
This was about her daughter, her innocent, loving daughter who only wanted to help people and make her parents proud. When she opened her eyes, William saw a steel in them that he rarely witnessed. Catherine had always been protective of their children, but this was different. This was a lioness recognizing a threat to her cub.
What did Charlotte say about what happened? Catherine asked.
She asked me why the queen consort didn't like her very much, William replied quietly. She wanted to know if she had done something wrong. Those words hit Catherine like physical blows. The idea that her confident, spirited daughter was questioning herself because of Camilla's behavior made her see red.
We cannot let this continue, Catherine said firmly.
I won't have Charlotte growing up thinking she's not good enough because Camilla feels threatened by a child.
William nodded. What do you want to do?
Catherine was quiet for a long moment, her mind racing through possibilities. The royal family had protocols for handling conflicts, usually involving quiet conversations and diplomatic solutions. But this felt too personal, too damaging for diplomatic niceties. I want to speak with her directly, Catherine said finally. No palace officials, no intermediaries.
Just the two of us. Catherine, that might not be wise. If this escalates, it's already escalated, Catherine interrupted.
The moment she decided to target my daughter, she made this personal. And if she thinks I'm going to stand by and watch her damage Charlotte's confidence and joy, she's gravely mistaken.
William studied his wife's face.
In their years together, he had seen her handle criticism, scandal, and public pressure with remarkable grace. But he had never seen her this angry, this determined. It both worried and impressed him. The king won't be pleased if this becomes public, William warned. Then, Camilla should have thought of that before she decided to bully a child, Catherine replied coldly.
I'm not threatening to go public, William.
I'm simply going to have a conversation about appropriate behavior around our children. As they continued to discuss the situation, Catherine's phone buzzed with a text from Charlotte's tutor. Their daughter had completed her morning lessons but seemed distracted and sad. She kept asking if she had done something wrong at the hospital visit. Reading that message cemented Catherine's resolve. She would not allow Camilla's insecurities to damage her daughter's spirit or self-worth. Charlotte was a beautiful, intelligent, compassionate child who deserved to grow up feeling confident and loved, not wondering if she was worthy of her place in the family.
When will you speak to her? William asked.
Today, Catherine replied without hesitation.
This afternoon.
I want this resolved before Charlotte has to see her again. As Catherine began planning her approach, she felt a familiar calm descending over her. This was the same focused determination that had helped her navigate her entry into the royal family, her wedding day pressures, and countless public appearances. But, this time, it wasn't about duty or protocol. This was about protecting her child. She thought about Charlotte's excitement that morning, her eagerness to help others, her pure heart that saw the best in everyone. Camilla had taken advantage of that innocence, and Catherine would make sure it never happened again.
The afternoon couldn't come soon enough.
Catherine had a conversation to have, and she intended to make her position absolutely clear.
Catherine spent the early afternoon in careful preparation, not for her appearance, but for her words.
She sat in her private sitting room, rehearsing what she would say to Camilla. Every sentence needed to be measured yet firm, diplomatic yet unmistakably clear about her boundaries.
At 3 o'clock, she made the call to Clarence's house.
Camilla's private secretary answered, and Catherine's request for an immediate private meeting was met with obvious surprise.
The Queen Consort is reviewing preparations for next week's engagements, the secretary explained hesitantly.
Then, I suggest she makes time, Catherine replied, her tone leaving no room for negotiation.
I'll be there in 30 minutes.
The drive to Clarence's house felt both endless and too short. Catherine stared out the window at the familiar London streets, her mind focused on Charlotte's confused face that morning. Her daughter had asked again why the Queen Consort seemed disappointed in her, and Catherine had struggled to find words that wouldn't reveal the truth while still comforting her child.
Clarence's house stood imposing against the grey afternoon sky.
Catherine had been here countless times for family gatherings and official meetings, but today felt different. Today, she wasn't coming as the dutiful daughter-in-law or the supportive royal family member. She was coming as a mother defending her child. Camilla's private secretary met Catherine in the ornate entrance hall, her expression carefully neutral but her discomfort obvious.
Your Royal Highness, the Queen Consort is in the morning room. She's asked me to inform you that she only has 20 minutes before her next appointment. Catherine smiled coldly. That should be more than sufficient.
The morning room was Camilla's favorite space in the house, decorated in warm yellows and filled with family photographs and personal mementos. Camilla sat in a high-backed chair by the fireplace, reading glasses perched on her nose as she reviewed documents. She looked up as Catherine entered, and, for a moment, neither woman spoke. Catherine, Camilla said finally, removing her glasses with a slight smile that didn't reach her eyes.
This is unexpected. I trust the children are well. That's exactly what I'm here to discuss, Catherine replied, remaining standing. She had deliberately chosen not to sit, wanting to maintain the psychological advantage of height. Camilla's eyebrows rose slightly. Oh? Is there some concern?
The innocent tone grated on Catherine's nerves. She had planned to ease into the conversation diplomatically, but Camilla's pretense of ignorance made her abandon that approach. Yesterday's hospital visit, Catherine said directly. Your treatment of Charlotte was unacceptable.
Camilla blinked, then set down her papers with deliberate care. I'm not sure what you mean.
Charlotte performed beautifully yesterday. The children loved meeting her. Don't, Catherine said sharply.
Don't pretend you don't know exactly what I'm talking about.
You deliberately excluded my daughter from photo opportunities, interrupted her presentations, and humiliated her in front of sick children. The pretense fell away from Camilla's face, replaced by a cooler expression.
I think you're overreacting, Catherine.
These events require careful management.
I was simply ensuring everything went smoothly. By telling a cancer patient that you're more important than Charlotte because you're queen now?
Catherine's voice remained controlled, but the fury beneath was unmistakable.
Camilla's face flushed slightly. That comment was taken out of context. I was simply explaining the royal hierarchy to avoid confusion.
To a sick child who specifically asked to meet the real princess, Catherine continued. You saw an 8-year-old girl's excitement and decided to crush it to satisfy your own ego.
That's quite enough, Camilla said, standing now as well.
I don't appreciate being spoken to this way in my own home. Catherine stepped closer, her voice dropping but intensifying. And I don't appreciate watching you systematically undermine my daughter's confidence.
This isn't the first incident, is it?
The comments about her curtsy, her dress choices, her training, it's all been leading to this. Camilla's composure cracked slightly. Charlotte is a lovely girl, but she needs to understand her place in the family hierarchy.
She won't always be the center of attention. Her place? Catherine repeated incredulously.
She's a child, Camilla. A child who looks up to you, who is excited to work alongside you, and you used that trust to make yourself feel more important. I am more important, Camilla snapped, finally, dropping the diplomatic facade.
I am the Queen Consort.
I've worked for decades to earn my position in this family, and I won't be overshadowed by a child who was born into privilege."
The words hung in the air like a slap.
Catherine stared at Camilla, seeing clearly for the first time the depth of resentment and insecurity that drove her actions.
"Born into privilege?" Catherine said quietly.
Charlotte didn't choose to be born royal any more than she chose to be targeted by a woman old enough to know better.
"But, you, Camilla, you did choose to marry into this family.
You chose to accept the responsibility that comes with that position, including being a positive influence on the children."
Camilla's face had gone red. "Don't lecture me about responsibility.
You have no idea what I've endured to get here, the criticism, the hatred. Now that I'm finally queen, I won't be upstaged by anyone."
"You're being upstaged by an 8-year-old?" Catherine asked with icy incredulity. "Do you hear yourself?
You're a grown woman, the queen consort of the United Kingdom, and you're jealous of a child."
"I'm not jealous,"
Camilla protested, but her voice lacked conviction.
"Then, what would you call it?" Catherine demanded.
Yesterday, when Charlotte's face lit up talking to those children, when she gave them her handmade cards, when she showed genuine compassion, what did you feel?
Pride?
Joy? Or did you feel threatened?
Camilla's silence was answer enough.
Catherine continued, her voice gaining strength.
"Charlotte didn't steal anything from you yesterday.
Those children's smiles, their excitement at meeting her, that wasn't taking away from your moment. That was the point of the visit. To bring joy to sick children. But, instead of supporting that, you turned it into a competition. The media will always prefer the young, pretty princess," Camilla said bitterly.
"They'll compare us constantly. I have to protect my position." "From a child?" Catherine shook her head in disbelief.
"Your position isn't threatened by Charlotte's existence, Camilla. It's threatened by your own behavior. Every time you belittle her, every time you show that pettiness and insecurity, you diminish yourself."
Camilla moved to the window, her back to Catherine.
When she spoke again, her voice was quieter but still defensive.
"It's easy for you to judge.
You've never had to fight for your place in this family. You were welcomed from the beginning."
Catherine felt a flash of anger at this rewriting of history. "Welcomed?"
"I was scrutinized, criticized, and judged for years before William and I married. The difference is, I didn't take that frustration out on children."
"The children adore you," Camilla said, turning back around. "They barely tolerate me." "And whose fault is that?" Catherine asked pointedly.
"Children respond to genuine affection and kindness. If you're feeling disconnected from them, perhaps you should examine why, rather than trying to tear down their confidence." For a moment, Camilla looked almost vulnerable, like she might acknowledge the truth in Catherine's words. But, then, her defenses went back up. "I won't apologize for protecting my position," she said firmly.
Catherine felt the last of her diplomatic intentions evaporate. "Then, let me be crystal clear about mine.
If you ever treat my daughter that way again, if you ever humiliate her or undermine her confidence to feed your own ego, you will have a much bigger problem than unfavorable media comparisons."
"Are you threatening me?" Camilla asked, her voice sharp.
"I'm stating a fact," Catherine replied calmly. "I've spent 12 years in this family being diplomatic, being understanding, giving people the benefit of the doubt. But, when it comes to my children, all of that goes out the window. Charlotte trusts you, looks up to you, and you betrayed that trust."
"It won't happen again." Camilla's face had gone pale. "Charles will hear about this conversation."
"I certainly hope so," Catherine said.
"Because then, he'll know exactly where I stand on the protection of my children.
And I think you'll find that William feels exactly the same way." The two women stared at each other across the elegant room, years of careful royal politeness stripped away to reveal the raw tension beneath. "Charlotte is going to grow up to be an amazing young woman," Catherine continued, her voice softening slightly.
"She's kind, intelligent, and compassionate.
She has the potential to be a tremendous asset to this family and this monarchy. But only if she's allowed to develop that confidence and joy without being torn down by people who should be supporting her."
Catherine moved toward the door, then turned back one final time. You have a choice, Camilla. You can continue this petty jealousy and damage your own reputation in the process, or you can choose to be the grandmother figure Charlotte deserves. But, if you choose to continue targeting my daughter, you'll discover just how fierce this particular princess can be when her children are threatened. With that, Catherine left Clarence's house, her heart still racing but her mind clear. The confrontation had gone better than she'd hoped. Camilla's mask had slipped completely, revealing the insecurity and jealousy that drove her actions. More importantly, Catherine had made her position absolutely clear. As her car pulled away from Clarence's house, Catherine felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She had protected her daughter in the only way that mattered, by ensuring the threat knew exactly what it was facing. Now she had to go home to Charlotte and somehow help heal the damage that had already been done. The drive back to Adelaide Cottage gave Catherine time to process what had just transpired. Her hands, which had remained steady throughout the confrontation, now trembled slightly as the adrenaline began to fade. She had crossed a line today, abandoned the careful diplomacy that had served her well for over a decade as a member of the royal family. But, as she thought of Charlotte's confused face that morning, she felt no regret. Her phone buzzed with a text from William. How did it go? Catherine typed back, we need to talk. I'm heading home. The cottage appeared peaceful as her car pulled into the private drive. Through the windows, she could see Charlotte in the garden with her tutor, working on what appeared to be a nature project. Her daughter's concentrated expression and animated gestures as she pointed out different flowers brought a smile to Catherine's face for the first time that day. William met her at the door, his expression tense with concern. That bad? He asked, studying her face. Actually, no, Catherine replied, surprising him. It was exactly what needed to happen. But, we should discuss it privately first, before the children get involved. They retreated to William's study once again. Catherine recounted the conversation in detail, watching William's expression grow darker as she described Camilla's admission of jealousy and her bitter comments about Charlotte's birth into privilege. She actually said she won't be upstaged by Charlotte? William asked incredulously. Those were her exact words. And, when I asked her to examine why the children barely tolerate her, she deflected rather than acknowledging her own behavior. Catherine sat down heavily in the chair across from William's desk. The mask came off completely. This isn't about royal protocol or proper training. This is about a grown woman being threatened by an 8-year-old's natural charisma. William was quiet for several moments, processing the implications. Father isn't going to be happy about this. I know, Catherine acknowledged. But, I'm past caring about keeping the peace when my daughter's well-being is at stake. Camilla made her choice when she decided to target Charlotte. Now she has to live with the consequences. What consequences? William asked carefully. Catherine met his gaze steadily. Complete transparency. No more diplomatic silence when she makes snide comments about the children. No more giving her the benefit of the doubt when she undermines them. And, absolutely no more unsupervised engagements with Charlotte until Camilla proves she can behave appropriately. William nodded slowly. I agree completely. But, this is going to create a massive rift in the family. The rift already existed, Catherine pointed out. I just dragged it into the open where we can deal with it honestly instead of pretending everything is fine while Charlotte suffers. As if summoned by their conversation, they heard Charlotte's voice in the hallway, talking excitedly to someone about the butterflies she had spotted in the garden. Catherine's heart clenched as she remembered her daughter's earlier questions about whether she had done something wrong. We should talk to her, Catherine said. She needs to understand that what happened yesterday wasn't her fault. They found Charlotte in the family room, spreading her nature drawings across the coffee table for her brothers to see. George was dutifully admiring her work while Louis peppered her with questions about where she had found each specimen. Mummy! Daddy! Charlotte looked up with bright eyes. Look what I found today. Mrs. Henderson says this is a rare butterfly for this time of year. Catherine sat beside her daughter, genuinely impressed by the detailed drawings. These are beautiful, darling. You have such an artistic eye. Do you think the Queen Consort would like to see them? Charlotte asked innocently. Maybe I could show her next time we have an engagement together. Catherine felt William's sharp intake of breath behind her. This was the opening they needed, but it broke her heart that Charlotte was still trying to please someone who had hurt her. Actually, sweetheart, Daddy and I wanted to talk to you about yesterday's hospital visit, Catherine said gently, setting aside the drawings. Charlotte's expression immediately became guarded. Did I do something wrong? I tried to be very polite and remember all my manners. You didn't do anything wrong, Catherine said firmly, reaching out to take her daughter's hand. You were absolutely perfect yesterday. The children at the hospital loved meeting you, and your gift cards made them so happy. Then, why? Charlotte started, then stopped, clearly struggling with something. Why what, darling? William encouraged, sitting on Charlotte's other side. Why did the Queen Consort seem disappointed in me? Charlotte asked in a small voice. When that little girl asked to meet me, she looked angry. And, when I tried to give my cards to the boy in the wheelchair, she stepped in front of me. Catherine felt her jaw clench again, but she kept her voice calm and soothing. Sometimes adults have feelings that don't have anything to do with children, but those feelings can make them behave in ways that seem confusing or hurtful. Did she not want me there? Charlotte asked, her eyes beginning to fill with tears. Oh, sweetheart, Catherine pulled her daughter close. What happened yesterday had nothing to do with you or anything you did. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes when they're feeling insecure or worried about themselves. But she's the queen, Charlotte said, confusion clear in her voice. Why would she be insecure? William exchanged a look with Catherine over Charlotte's head. Their daughter was remarkably perceptive for her age, and they had always tried to be honest with their children while still being age-appropriate. Being queen is a big responsibility, William explained carefully. Sometimes people worry about doing a good job, and those worries can make them act in ways that aren't very kind. But I wasn't trying to be better than her, Charlotte protested. I just wanted to help the sick children feel happy. And you did exactly that, Catherine assured her. Every single child you met yesterday felt happier because of your kindness and warmth. That's what matters, Charlotte. Not how any adult reacted. Charlotte was quiet for a moment, processing this information with the seriousness that often surprised adults who interacted with her. Will I have to do more engagements with her? She asked finally. Catherine felt her protective instincts flare again. Not unless you want to. And if you do choose to work with her again, Daddy or I will always be there too. Relief flooded Charlotte's face. I'd like that. I want to keep helping children, but I'd feel safer if you were there. The word safer hit Catherine like a physical blow. That her confident, outgoing daughter felt unsafe around a family member because of one woman's jealousy and insecurity made her angrier than she had been even during the confrontation with Camilla. You should always feel safe at royal engagements, Catherine said firmly. That's our job as your parents, to make sure you're supported and protected. Can I still do my art project for the next hospital visit? Charlotte asked, brightening slightly. Of course you can, William said. In fact, I think we should plan a special art-focused engagement just for you. You could teach some of the children basic drawing techniques. Charlotte's face lit up completely at this suggestion, the shadows from yesterday's experience finally beginning to lift. Really? I could show them how to draw butterflies like the ones I found today. That's a wonderful idea, Catherine agreed, feeling some of her own tension ease as she watched her daughter's enthusiasm return. Later that evening, after the children had been settled for the night, Catherine and William received the call they had been expecting. Charles's private secretary requested their immediate presence at Clarence's house for a family meeting. Here we go, William said grimly as they prepared to leave. Catherine checked her appearance in the mirror one final time, ensuring her expression was composed and professional. She was about to face the king's likely displeasure, but she felt no anxiety. She had done what any mother would do to protect her child. The drive back to Clarence's house felt different this time. Instead of the focused anger that had propelled her earlier visit, Catherine felt a calm determination. She had already fought the important battle today. Everything from here on was simply managing the consequences. Clarence's house bustled with unusual evening activity as they arrived.
Multiple cars were parked outside, indicating that this was indeed going to be a significant family meeting. Catherine recognized the vehicles belonging to the king, Anne, and Edward, along with several senior staff cars. As they were escorted to the main drawing room, Catherine caught a glimpse of Camilla's tear-stained face through a doorway. Apparently, her earlier composure had cracked completely after Catherine's departure. The drawing room held nearly a dozen people, including immediate family members and several senior courtiers. The king sat in the center, his expression thunderous, and looked grimly amused, while Edward appeared deeply uncomfortable with the entire situation.
William. Catherine, the king acknowledged them with stiff formality as they took their seats. I understand there was an unfortunate incident today. Catherine met his gaze steadily. There was indeed, Your Majesty. Though I would characterize yesterday's incident as unfortunate, and today's as necessary.
The king's eyebrows rose at her direct response.
I see. Perhaps you could explain your perspective on what necessitated such dramatic action.
As Catherine began to recount the events, she watched the faces around the room carefully. Anne's expression grew increasingly approving as the story unfolded, while Edward looked shocked at the details of Camilla's behavior toward Charlotte. When Catherine finished, the room was silent for several long moments. I see, the king said finally. These are serious allegations. They're not allegations, Catherine replied firmly. They're documented facts, witnessed by security personnel and recorded on video. Your Majesty, with all due respect, this isn't a matter of differing perspectives. This is about protecting a child from inappropriate adult behavior. The confrontation with the king was just beginning, but Catherine felt ready. She had already won the battle that mattered most, ensuring Charlotte's protection. Everything else was simply politics. The tension in the drawing room was thick enough to cut with a knife as King Charles processed Catherine's account. The assembled family members and courtiers waited in uncomfortable silence, clearly unprepared for such a direct confrontation within the royal family's inner circle. These are very serious accusations against the Queen Consort, Charles said finally, his voice carefully controlled. I trust you understand the gravity of what you're suggesting. I understand completely, Catherine replied without flinching. I'm suggesting that a grown woman deliberately humiliated my 8-year-old daughter to satisfy her own ego. I'm suggesting that she's been systematically undermining Charlotte's confidence for months. And I'm suggesting that this behavior stops now. And spoke up from across the room. Charles, I think we need to see this security footage Catherine mentioned. That won't be necessary, Camilla's voice came from the doorway. She entered the room with red-rimmed eyes but a defiant expression. I don't deny that there was tension yesterday. Tension? William spoke for the first time since entering the room. You told a sick child that you were more important than my daughter. That's not tension, that's cruelty. Charles looked between his wife and his son, the weight of the situation clearly pressing down on him. Camilla, is this true? Camilla's defiance wavered slightly under her husband's direct gaze. I may have spoken poorly in the moment. The situation was stressful, and I felt that Charlotte needed guidance about appropriate behavior during royal engagements. What inappropriate behavior? Catherine asked sharply. Being kind to sick children? Showing genuine compassion? Making handmade gifts? Which of those behaviors needed correction? She was drawing too much attention, Camilla said, her voice rising slightly. The photographers were focusing entirely on her. The purpose of the visit was to represent the crown, not to showcase one particular child. The purpose of the visit, Anne interjected dryly, was to bring joy to hospitalized children. If Charlotte accomplished that more effectively than you did, perhaps you should ask yourself why, rather than trying to sabotage her efforts. Edward nodded in agreement. I've seen Charlotte at several engagements. Her natural warmth with children is remarkable. That's not something to suppress, it's something to celebrate. Charles rubbed his forehead, clearly struggling with the competing loyalties.
This family cannot function if we're attacking each other publicly. Then, perhaps certain members of this family should stop attacking children, Catherine said coolly. Your Majesty, I want to be very clear about something. I didn't create this conflict. I simply refuse to allow it to continue in silence. What are you proposing? Charles asked wearily. Catherine had anticipated this question and had her answer ready. New protocols for any engagements involving the children. Clear boundaries about appropriate behavior from all adult family members. And consequences when those boundaries are crossed. You can't dictate terms to the crown, one of the senior courtiers objected. Catherine turned to face the man who had spoken. I'm not dictating anything to the crown. I'm establishing non-negotiable boundaries for my children's well-being. The crown can choose whether or not to respect those boundaries. The implied threat hung in the air. Everyone in the room understood that Catherine and William represented the future of the monarchy. Their children were the next generation of royals. Alienating them would be catastrophic for the institution's long-term stability. What specific boundaries are you requesting? Charles asked, his tone suggesting he was trying to find a path forward. Charlotte will not participate in any solo engagements with the Queen Consort until there's clear evidence that the behavior has changed, Catherine began. Any family member who undermines the children's confidence or makes them feel unsafe will lose the privilege of working with them. And there will be complete transparency about any incidents, no more covering up inappropriate behavior to avoid family drama. These terms are ridiculous, Camilla protested. I'm being punished for one poorly chosen comment. You're being held accountable for a pattern of behavior, William corrected firmly. Catherine has been more diplomatic about this than you deserve. I would have demanded much stronger consequences. And leaned forward in her chair. Camilla, I'm curious. How exactly did you envision this playing out? Did you think undermining a child would somehow enhance your own position? I wasn't undermining anyone, Camilla said defensively. I was trying to maintain appropriate protocol during a royal engagement. By stepping in front of an 8-year-old who was trying to give handmade cards to sick children. Edward asked incredulously. What protocol requires that? The room erupted in multiple conversations as family members began debating the specifics of what had occurred. Catherine watched the chaos with grim satisfaction. The truth was finally out in the open, and Camilla's defenders were notably silent. Charles raised his hand for silence. Enough. This is not how the royal family resolves internal conflicts. Then, how do we resolve it? William asked directly. Because sweeping this under the carpet isn't an option anymore. My children's well-being is not negotiable. Charles looked around the room, taking in the faces of his family members. And was clearly supporting Catherine and William. Edward looked deeply uncomfortable but was nodding in agreement with their position. Several of the courtiers were whispering among themselves, clearly concerned about the broader implications. The Queen Consort will issue a private apology to Princess Charlotte, Charles announced finally. No, Catherine said immediately. Charlotte doesn't need to know the details of this conflict. She's already confused and hurt enough. What she needs is for the adults around her to behave appropriately going forward. Then, what do you propose? Charles asked, frustration creeping into his voice. Catherine had anticipated this too. A genuine change in behavior. No more critical comments about the children's appearance, manner, or performance at engagements. No more competing with them for attention during public events. And absolutely no more undermining their confidence to make herself feel more important. And if these conditions aren't met? Charles pressed. Then, the children will limit their interactions with family members who can't treat them appropriately, William answered for his wife. This isn't a threat, Father. It's a statement of fact. We will always prioritize our children's emotional well-being over family politics. The weight of this statement settled over the room. Everyone understood the implications. The Wales family withdrawing from close cooperation with Camilla would be noticed by the public and the press. It could create exactly the kind of family drama that Charles was trying to avoid.
Camilla, Charles said quietly, turning to his wife.
Do you understand what's being asked of you?
Camilla looked around the room, seeing no support in any of the faces before her. Even the courtiers who might normally defend her position seemed uncomfortable with her behavior toward Charlotte.
I understand, she said stiffly.
Though I maintain that my intentions were misunderstood. Your intentions don't matter, Catherine said bluntly. What matters is the impact of your actions on my daughter.
And if you can't understand the difference, then you shouldn't be working with children at all.
The meeting continued for another hour, establishing specific protocols and boundaries. Catherine found herself essentially dictating terms to the future queen consort, a situation she would have found unimaginable just days earlier. But every time she wavered, she thought of Charlotte's confused face asking if she had done something wrong. As they finally prepared to leave and approached Catherine in the hallway.
Well done, she said quietly.
It's about time someone called her out on this behavior. I've been watching her interactions with the children for months, and it's been deeply concerning.
You noticed it too? Catherine asked. Hard to miss if you were looking for it. The constant corrections, the subtle put-downs disguised as helpful advice. But, you're the first person with the standing to actually confront it. Anne paused.
Charlotte is a special child. She has the potential to be an incredible asset to this family if she's allowed to develop her natural gifts without being torn down. As Catherine and William drove home to Adelaide Cottage, they both felt emotionally drained but relieved.
Do you think it will actually change anything? William asked.
It has to, Catherine replied firmly.
Because now everyone knows we're watching.
And, more importantly, now everyone knows what the consequences will be if it continues.
They arrived home to find the children already asleep. Catherine crept into Charlotte's room, watching her daughter's peaceful face in the dim nightlight.
Tomorrow, Charlotte would wake up not knowing that her parents had fought a battle on her behalf. She would continue to be the bright, compassionate child she had always been, but now with the protection she deserved. Catherine leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead gently. Sleep well, my brave girl, she whispered.
Mummy and Daddy will always protect you.
As she left the room, Catherine felt a profound sense of peace settle over her. The confrontation had been difficult, the family meeting had been tense, and the long-term implications were still unclear. But she had accomplished what mattered most. She had protected her daughter and established clear boundaries that would prevent future harm. The royal family would adapt to these new realities, just as it always had when faced with changing circumstances. But, most importantly, Charlotte would grow up knowing that her parents would always prioritize her well-being over political considerations or family harmony. In the end, that was the only victory that truly mattered.
The next morning brought unexpected news.
Charlotte bounded into the kitchen with unusual excitement, chattering about a letter that had been delivered with her breakfast tray.
Mummy, look! I got invited to visit the Children's Art Therapy Center next week. They want me to teach watercolor painting to the young patients. Can we go? Please? Catherine read the formal invitation, noting that it came directly from the hospital's board, not through palace channels.
Word of Charlotte's natural gift with children was spreading beyond yesterday's difficult engagement. Of course we can go, darling, Catherine said, hugging her daughter close.
I think it's wonderful that they want to learn from you.
As Charlotte danced around the kitchen with excitement, William caught Catherine's eye and smiled. Their daughter's spirit was intact, her confidence restored, and her future bright with possibilities. The battle had been worth fighting.